Good morning, Year 5. I am going to be reading a short story from The Fib for you. So I hope you're all comfortable. I hope you've got maybe a glass of milk or a glass of water and a biscuit to enjoy. So this story from The Fib is called The Gang Hut. We used to have a gang hut, Barry, Tony and me. It was smashing. It used to be in Tony's back garden. In fact, I think it's still there. I remember one of the last meetings we ever had. It wasn't long after August bank holiday. I went to the gang hut straight after school, and there was a shortcut you could take over a broken wall. You got a bit mucky, but it was quicker. I got to the hut and knocked the secret knock. 2 quick knocks. A pause, followed by 3 more. Give the password. That was Barry, our leader. I stared at the door, which had the silent 3 painted on it. I'd done that and thought, what password? What do you mean, what password? What do you mean? What do I mean, what password? Barry's voice became deeper and bossy. Well, if you'd attended the last gang meeting, you would know what password. Oh, of course. That's why I didn't know this blooming password that Barry was talking about. Of course, I didn't go to the last gang meeting. How can you go on Bank Holiday Monday? I'd gone with my mum and Auntie Doreen to Scarborough and it rained all blooming day. I'd felt a bit daft carrying my bucket and spade and ship on the seafront when it was pouring with rain. Yes, and when I'd cheeked my Auntie Doreen off my mum had hit me, I'd cried, even though it didn't hurt. Come on, Barry, tell us what the password is. Well, you haven't to tell anybody. Course not. All right then, it's Ouvre la porte. You what? Ouvre la porte. I didn't know what he was talking about. It's a blooming long password, isn't it? It's 3 words. They're French. Not many people will know what it means. Well, what does it mean? It means open the door. It's a bit ordinary, isn't it? Not if you say it in French. I suppose so. Anyway, open the door. Say the password. You know it's me. Let us in. Say the password. Oh, all right. Ouvre la porte. At last, I was in the den. It was only small, but at least it was ours. Barry's, Tony's and mine. And that is the silent 3. And now that we'd got a lock and key from Barry's dad, nobody else could get in. Come to think of it, neither could me and Tony because Barry always kept the key, seeing as his dad had given us the lock. Tony had said that he should keep the key because the den was in his back garden. I'd agreed. Not that I wanted Tony to have the key either, but Barry always got things his way. He used to be like that a lot. Barry did. Pushing his weight around, telling us how much better he did things than we did. And Barry started going on about Tony being late. Where's Tony? Isn't he coming? Tony was in the same class as me. Yes, but Miss Taylor kept him in for eating in class. Rotten thing. She's always keeping people in, you know. Yes, I know. She took us last year. Barry was in class 4 and was going in for his scholarship in December. Tony and me were only in class 3. If I'd been taking my scholarship, I'd have been scared stiff, but Barry didn't seem to be. Barry, do you think you'll be scared when you take your scholarship? Yeah, of course, everybody gets scared. Wouldn't you? Oh yeah, I know everybody gets scared, but I just wondered if you did. Which school do you want to go to if you pass? Oh, I don't know. Same as my brother, I suppose. I don't know. Just then there were 2 knocks on the door, followed by 3 more. Hey, Barry, that might be Tony. What do you mean, might be Tony? It must be Tony. He's the only other one who knows the secret knock, isn't he? Oh, yeah. Ask him the password. Go on. I'm going to. Don't worry. Give the password. I heard Tony's voice stuttering, trying to think of the password. Oh, he'd forgotten it. He didn't know it. I was right glad he didn't know it. Do you know it? Do you know it? You can't come in if you don't know it, can you, Barry? Hang on, I'm thinking. I'll get it. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. I know. Ouvre the report. No, ouvre la porte. Well, near enough, wasn't it? Let us in. All right, come in. Barry opened the door and let Tony in. Now, we all know the password, don't we? I knew Barry would say something. You should have known it before. I shouldn't really have let you in. Well, I nearly knew it, didn't I, Barry? Tony looked at Barry for some kind of praise, although Tony and me didn't really like Barry being the leader of the Silent Three. We accepted him as such, and also accepted his decisions on certain gang matters. It was Barry, for instance, who had decided on the gang's policy, which was to rob the rich to help the poor, because that was what Robin Hood did, although it was Tony who had thought of the name The Silent Three. We did lots of things in the gang hut. There was a window with a frame which opened and closed on proper hinges. We had to admire Barry because he'd made that, and it was very clever. Of course, there was no real glass in it, but there was some sacking which kept nosy Parkers out. There was also a picture on one of the stone walls of a lady dressed in a long white robe, holding a little baby on her knee, and the baby had long curly hair, and it didn't have any clothes on, but you couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl. Barry didn't like it because he thought it looked soppy. Tony said his grandma had given it to him, and that they ought to be glad that they had it, because he bet there weren't many gangs that had a picture. I thought it looked nice. There was also a table which had 2 drawers, one for Barry and one for me and Tony to share. We kept all sorts of things in it, from a rubber stamp which said Albert Holdsworth, Wordstead Limited, to a half a potato, which when you dipped it into some paint and stamped it said The Silent Three. We had 1 chair and we took it in turns to sit in it, and 2 orange boxes. Also there was a small carpet which my mum was going to throw away. She said to me, "Oh, you don't want that dirty old thing?" And I said, yes, I did. And I'd muttered something about the fight against evil and the curse of the Silent Three, but then my mum wasn't listening. Anyway, the most important thing was that I'd got the carpet and proudly presented it to Barry and Tony at the next gang meeting. And what had really pleased me was the other 2 were impressed, and I'd hoped they'd be. Well, that was really all we had in the gang hut. Oh, except 2 candles which were kept for the emergencies. What shall we do then? Tony looked at Barry for an answer. This was usually the way gang meetings started, and most times the question was directed towards Barry, because his were usually the best ideas, and anyway, we always did what he suggested. Well, first I've got to give you the secret seal of the curse of the Silent Three. I knew this was what Barry would say, and it was just what I didn't want. I knew this was what Barry would say, and it was just what I didn't want. Oh, not again, Barry. I got into trouble with my mum last time. It took ages to get it off. My mum says I haven't to let you do it again. This didn't bother Barry. You've got to have the secret seal, or else you're not a member of the Silent Three. Isn't that right, Tony? Tony had to agree, although I knew by his face that he wasn't that keen to have the stamp either. Anyway, it won't go on so strong this time because I won't put any more paint on. Barry took out the half potato from his drawer. He had dried blue paint on it from the last time we'd used it, and he spat on it to make it wet. Oh, we'll all get diseases. No, you won't. Hold out your hand. No, I'm not having your spit all over me. Come on, you've got to have it or you'll be banned from the Silent Three. You've got to have it, hasn't he, Tony? Tony nodded in agreement, but he was only even more reluctant now that he was earlier on. And Barry looked right at me. Come on, are you going to have it or not? I just sat there. Well, you should have let us do our own spitting. Well, it's too late now. Are you going to have it or not? No, I'm not. Barry just lost his temper and then threw the potato on the floor. Well, I'm not bothered about the secret seal anyway, or the gang hut for that matter. I was only joining in to please you kids. Tony and me, he meant. I was really shocked because after all, he was the leader of the Silent Three. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there. Tony picked up the potato. I held my hand out and he stamped it. Then he stamped his own. He tried to stamp Barry's hand, but Barry wouldn't let him. The Silent Three sat in silence, me and Tony, waiting for the secret seal to dry, and Barry, well, just not interested. When the secret seal had dried, I started to talk to Barry. Hey Barry, you know that kid in your class with the big red patch on his face? That's a birthmark. Yeah, that big red birthmark. He was crying his head off in the lavatory this morning. Yeah, I know. His granddad died last night. He went home at dinner time. I remember my granddad. We used to go for walks when I was little. He's dead now. I don't remember my grandma though. She died when I was 2. What about your other granddad and grandma? I didn't know what Barry was talking about and looked at him. What other granddad and grandma? Your other granddad and grandma, you know. Your other granddad and grandma. You have 2 granddads and grandmas, you know. Or do you not even know that? Tony said that he had 2 as well. Yes, I've got 2 granddads and grandmas. I've got my granddad and my grandma Atkinson and my granddad and my grandma Spencer. Barry seemed to be really enjoying this. Oh, don't you know you have 2 granddads and grandmas? All I know is I've never seen my grandma because she died when I was 2 and my granddad's dead as well. As far as I was concerned, that was that. Although really it surprised me to hear that Barry and Tony both had 2 sets of granddads and grandmas. Why hadn't I? I'd have to ask my mum. Tony and Barry started talking about swimming. We start swimming lessons next year, and Tony meant me and him. You didn't have a swimming lesson till you go into class 4. Barry had been having lessons for a while and he was quite good. I can do lengths and a half on my back. Tony could float a bit. I'm right looking forward to having swimming lessons, aren't you? I wasn't really looking forward to having swimming lessons, to be honest. I was scared stiff. Yeah, I suppose so. I might be a bit scared though. What for? Oh, it was all right for Barry to talk. What is there to be scared about? You scared you might drown? Yes, I was. Of course I'm not. I'd only been to the swimming baths once in my life and somebody had pushed me in then. It was very scaring. I thought I was going to drown that time. The pool attendant had pulled me out and thumped the lad who'd punched me in. I'd never been to the baths again since, and Barry was going on about being scared. There's naught to be scared of, you know. It's dead easy swimming, isn't it, Tony? Don't know, I can't swim, I can float a bit. Ah, floating's easy, anyone can float. I couldn't. I was fed up with this talk about swimming. It reminded me too much of what was to come, so I started to talk about something else. It'll be bonfire night soon. This got us all quite excited, and Barry said we'd have the biggest bonfire in the neighbourhood. Tony said we should start collecting wood because it was the end of August already. We'll have to go down to the woods. We could go down on Sunday afternoon. Barry agreed, but I said I'd have to ask my mum. You're always having to ask her. Can't you do anything without asking her? Of course I can, but she just doesn't like me going down those woods. I had to go then because my mum told me I had to be in by 5:45. Tony had to go too because he was sleeping at our house that weekend because his mum was going away to stay with his big sister for a few days, who was married and lived in Manchester. My mum says by the time she gets back from Manchester, I'll be an uncle. So the gang meeting ended. Tony and me had to go to town the next day with my mum, but we said we'd see Barry at the gang cut at about 4:00. And Barry said all right, and that he was going home to see if he could find any empty bottles to take back to the shop so he'd have some money to buy toffees for the Saturday morning matinee. Barry started locking up the hut. Are you two going to the pictures tomorrow morning? I don't know. We might do. See you tomorrow afternoon anyway. Ta-ra. I asked my mum that night why I didn't have 2 grandmas and granddads like Tony and Barry, but she told me not to ask silly questions and to just get on with my supper. We didn't go to the matinee the next day because my mum said that we both had to have our hair cut before going into town that afternoon. I tried to get out of it, but I couldn't, and Tony didn't help either because he agreed with my mum and said we didn't really need our hair cut. Anyway, that was what happened, and at about 4:45, we came back from town with lots of shopping. Tony and me changed out of our best clothes. Mine were brand new. I'd only got them just before the bank holiday. Then we went straight over to the gang hut. Well, we just got over the broken wall into Tony's backyard and I knew something was wrong. When I realised what it was, I just couldn't believe it. The whole gang hut was wrecked. Honest, I'll never forget it. The door was wide open and inside the place was in a real mess. The 2 orange boxes were broken, the table was knocked over, and the picture of the lady was lying on the floor. The window frame was pulled away from the hinges. It was awful. All I could feel was this great thumping in my head. Hey, Tony, I wonder who did it. Barry did, look. He pointed to the door, and instead of the silent 3, it said the silent 2. Why did he do it? Tony shrugged his shoulders and said he'd probably felt like it. Neither of us knew then why Barry had done it. But Tony somehow didn't seem too bothered either. I suppose he knew that he'd be the leader of the gang now. I just couldn't understand it all. Why would Barry wreck the whole gang hut like this? Especially since he had built most of it himself, especially the window frame. When Tony left the gang, I became leader for a while. Tony didn't do anything like wrecking the hut, nor did I when I left. We just got tired of it and, well, lost interest. Some other younger lads used the hut for their meetings after us, but Barry, Tony and me weren't bothered. We didn't care who had the gang hut now. Well, I hope you enjoyed that short story, and I will upload another one next week. Thank you for listening. I hope you're all working hard at home.